Hey gang, it's your buddy Platt. Today I show you how to make Mountain Dew wine. So let's go. Alright guys, got a fun little video for you today. Recently I was on YouTube and saw one of the trending topics, I guess, in the home brewing, homemade alcohol world, what have you, is making Mountain Dew wine. That is a thing now. For those of you that are new to the channel, or even those that come around every once in a while, I have an entire series called Will It Ferment, where I try to ferment just different things you can find in the grocery store, what have you, see if we can turn them into alcohol. Things like cotton candy, peppermint candy. One of the things I did was cola. So we know that we can ferment cola. So something similar to what they, similar to Mountain Dew. Now, the videos I see online kind of do one of two methods. The first one is similar to what I did. Basically, we just take the sugars that are already in there, and we either try to avoid sodas with preservatives, or in the case of Mountain Dew, they drive off enough CO2 to affect the pH, which affects the preservatives, and they are able to ferment. And with the amount of sugars in a standard Mountain Dew, you should get around 4 to 5%, in your kind of standard sweet colas. The other method that I've seen out there that's really kind of taken off, which really trending, and it's videos from one of the big mead makers, is they basically make a mead Mountain Dew hybrid, and they get into low teens of ABV compared to just the standard 4, so you'd do a straight fermentation. And so they're getting a higher ABV. However, they'll admit, if you see some of the follow-up videos or some of the tasting videos, I think Clawhammer Supply has one of those videos or whatever, they'll even admit to you the taste is not all that great. It was more just an experiment to see, hey, can we make it something strong, a wine version, ABV-wise, of Mountain Dew. Well, today, I think we're going to try the same thing, but we're going to try to stay closer to that Mountain Dew flavor. If you've ever had mead before, you realize that's a different flavor profile that I don't know if necessarily is complementary with Mountain Dew. So what we're going to try to do today is we're going to try to get that higher ABV, but we're going to try to maintain the Mountain Dew flavor. Also kind of make it less of a wine thing, more of just a higher ABV Mountain Dew thing. So with that being said, let's get to making some Mountain Dew wine. All right, guys, let's get this party started. First thing we're going to have to do is we're going to have to basically kind of degas this stuff. We're going to have to take some of the fizz out. So easiest way to do that is just to pour, and pour aggressive. This is one of the advantages of one of these wide mouth fermenters. They come in real handy. I will see if I can find a link for those. I got this in the kit, but just real handy. All right. And a little for ourselves. All right, I am going to keep stirring this to dry that off. While I do that, I want to read the ingredients, because I think it's going to give us the key to how to make this better. The first ingredient is carbonated water. Makes sense. Second ingredient, high fructose corn syrup. Remember that one. Concentrated orange juice, citric acid, natural flavor, whatever that means, sodium benzoate, preserves freshness. That's one of the preservatives we have to. Caffeine, sodium citrate, gum arabic, intronic acid, calcium, disodium. God, I can't even pronounce some of these. Anyway, where I was going with this was the high fructose corn syrup. Instead of adding honey that adds its own kind of unique flavor and kind of funkiness, and again, depending on the style of honey, is it a clover honey, is it an orange honey, wildflower honey, what have you. Instead, I plan on using light corn syrup to basically bump up our ABV. They're already using high fructose corn syrup. Keep the sugar source the same. Thus, we should hopefully be keeping the flavor source the same. So, give me a few minutes to drive off this CO2 and we'll come back for our next step. All right, gang, so I got done driving off most of the CO2. Now, some of you out there might ask, well, why is that important? Because, like us, yeast also produces CO2. But like us, you don't want to generally just lay around in the atmosphere of CO2. Probably not the healthiest. So we drove off some of that CO2. And not 100% sure on this, but supposedly it does also help with the pH level. Now, why does the pH level matter? pH matters because in things like soft drinks or with tons of sugar, you naturally have a propensity to possibly have fermentation get started. Well, what the cola manufacturers do will add things like preservatives like maybe acetic acid or whatever that will drop the pH to a level where it's not conducive for the yeast to work. So another step we're going to take here to make sure that pH is low enough to give our yeast a chance to work is I'm going to add a teaspoon of baking soda. Now luckily I got plenty of headspace because this may kick off some CO2, but we're just going to add this. There we go. Kind of helps us drive off that last little bit of CO2, but this is going to help bring that pH back up to a level to let our yeast work. So I'm going to get this all integrated and we'll come back to add our corn syrup. All right, guys, time to add in our corn syrup. Like I said, when I was checking out this recipe, you're kind of looking at it, one of my first thoughts was, well, you know, in high fructose corn syrup, you're used, you know, a lot in producing, you know, soft drinks. And another thing I noticed also too, when you go to the grocery store, a pound of, or a 1 16-ounce container or 1 pound of corn syrup is significantly cheaper now than a pound of honey. So we're getting plenty of fermentables and we're saving $1 or $2, and we're hopefully staying closer to flavor profile. So with that being said, let me do a quick hydrometer reading and we'll come back to make our final additions. All right, gang, we got our last additions. I'm going to add a little bit of yeast nutrient to this. You know, we're dealing with pretty simple stuff. The nutritional value on soft drinks is low for humans, but also low for yeast. So we're going to want to give our yeast the best opportunity. So I'm going to add roughly a teaspoon of yeast nutrient in our Mtn Dew Wine. There we go, sprinkling around. If for whatever reason you do not have access to yeast nutrient, a little trick I learned a long time ago in cider or mead making, whatever, is a handful of raisins. Just the tannins, the nutrients off the skin will help the yeast, give it just enough nutrition. Let me give that a quick stir. Give it just enough nutrition to work through all that sugar and to continue propagate. Lastly, I'm going to switch gears. In the mead videos, they've used a Lavallin wine yeast or wine yeast. I am going with the Kviek yeast, mainly for the reason that I talk about in my beer videos is it ferments. It's at a warmer temperature. It's less temperature sensitive than some of the other yeast. Even a wine yeast may work up into the low 80s, but after get much higher, you start getting funky flavors. We're summertime. I'm in Vegas, so I'm going to go with the Kviek yeast because it's less temperature sensitive. Also, too, it works a little faster. Kviek yeast tends to cut through that sugar a little bit faster. So, with that being said, let's wrap up. All right, guys, time to wrap up. Basically, what we did, our recipe here, is basically 1 gallon of Mountain Dew. We degassed it to drive off that CO2, give a little healthier environment to our yeast. We added 1 pound or 16 ounces of light corn syrup. That's our additional fermentables to get our ABV up. I also added in there a teaspoon of baking soda to also raise our pH level. This kind of, again, gives our yeast a better situation to thrive in, which is what we want. And I also added a teaspoon of Yeast Nutrient to give it the nutrient that we need. Quick, again, the reminder, you could throw in a handful of raisins to help on the Yeast Nutrient part. Lastly, I pitched Kviek yeast because it's less temperature sensitive, especially in the summertime. I'm filming this around Memorial Day, so again, it works at warmer temperatures. If you live in a cooler climate, feel free to use a wine yeast or a Kviek yeast, whichever happens. Real quick, I did our hydrometer reading. We came in at 1088. If we get down to 1.00, we will come out at 11.5% alcohol by volume. So we should reach that wine-like ABV. Hopefully with the corn syrup, we can maintain the Mountain Dew flavor. Now, where do we go from here? I'm going to have this in primary for 1 week because, again, Kviek yeast works a little faster. We'll transfer, put it in secondary for another week, and then I will bottle after 2 weeks. And then I'm going to let it sit about a month or so. Again, honey and meads sometimes will sit for 6 months, a year, 2 years before you taste them. Honey is just that complex of a sugar. The fermentation process it kind of works and the flavors unfold. Corn syrup's a little simpler, so I'm probably shooting for a month or 2 from now. We'll have something to try. Well, I hope you liked this video. If you did, please subscribe down below. Also, please like the video because it lets YouTube know we're putting out good product. If you have any questions, comments, concerns, or ideas for videos, you can always put them in the comment section or contact me on the Twitter page. Till next time, bottoms up.